Blog Talk Radio.
Paratopia. You hear that? It's the sound of crickets as I do an impromptu midweek show for no apparent reason. I just had some stuff on my mind that I wanted to originally, I guess, write, but I'm too lazy. So, not going to do that. I'm going to talk into this microphone, and then hopefully people will call. Now, Jeff Ritzman was off on some sort of band rehearsal or something, but I believe that got canceled, so the odds of him calling in at some point are greater than nothing. And if you're joining me in the chat room, it's probably going to be hard for me to pontificate and look at the chat box, so I will do so intermittently, but don't be upset with me if I miss a lot of what you guys are saying. All right, so what the hell am I going to be babbling about and for how long? Well, for how long, I don't know. This might take 15 minutes, it might take 2 hours, who knows? But I wanted to talk about our friend enlightenment, because every now and then a confluence of things sort of come together that make me think about this stuff yet again. And in this case, it's questions from friends, and it's arguments on our message board, and I think in the end all of it's good because it either, helps me to rethink my positions on things, or what I think I know about life, the universe, and everything, or it helps me to refine what I do know down to its, prime elements. I think if you can't tweet it, it probably isn't true. There you go. You can quote me on that. So I don't know how much paranormal stuff you're going to hear in this bit. So if that's what you're looking for, you may not like what you're, going to hear. But really, the first thing that sort of has been chewing at me to say is a question that I got from a friend who had started to read Urgency. It got about 10 pages in and then asked me essentially if I found the key to enlightenment, and was it love? Was the key love? And my answer is no. The key is not love. Now, why isn't the key love? Because love is the thing that one becomes after the fact. And then I got to thinking today about, what is that? What's an example of that? I mean, you can't say what love is, right? Because the second you have a definition, it's not real. You can say what love is not, and you can sort of peel away at the onion. But then today I was sitting in a coffee shop, and I Not a good coffee shop, not like Starbucks. It's not like I was, part of a scene, typing away at my computer and with my goatee and all that. No, this was just a Dunkin' Donuts, the working man's coffee shop. In any event, sitting there enjoying my coffee, and I thought, we're not that far away from robots. So what will happen if you have a robot that is in every way human, except it cannot love? Do you think that other humans will be able to fall in love with it? And I bet all of you are answering yes, because you're smart. And that's just it. When we say love, when we say we're in love, what does that mean? There are people who can claim to love blow-up dolls, claim to be in love with animals, all sorts of crazy things that you see on, HBO specials and stuff. So what happens when we finally get the robot that can seem to make decisions for itself and do everything except love? Well, we'll say that it can love, right? We'll project onto it what we want it to be. Does that sound right? Does that strike you as correct in saying that, what I'm saying to you right now? If you have a robot and it can't love, you can fall in love with it. People have relationships with their devices right now, right? Their computers, you yell at the TV, that sort of rudimentary thing. So now take away the robot and put another person there. So now you've got another person that you are projecting things onto and calling that love. That is what we're doing, right? And Rojan here is saying, well, is love related to a soul? Well, that's a whole other question. Is love related to a soul? Let's baby step this. The way that we treat love right now is only related to our wants. It's related to the ego, the self, right? We project onto others either an unrealistic expectation, or maybe it is a realistic expectation. The point is we never really meet people face to face. We meet them expectation first. And so all of this is to say that even to ask the question, did you find it and was it love? I think we have to define what love is first. We have to define what these things are, because I don't think we're all even on the same page with what they actually are. We just kind of go, well, there's something called love, there's something called the soul, there's something called this and that, and we can't really define what they are, and so whatever anyone's definition is, that's the reality of it. And saying that gives it the definition. That's sort of the problem. And not only do we give it a definition, but then we say, when we want to sort of do therapy on ourselves and sort of see through all this mess, we go, well, now I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to work on the ego. I've got ego issues. And we sort of think that ego means the self, but then we, at the same time, think that we can divorce ourselves from the self to work on it, right? So you're going to, think about this is what we do, right? We go, okay, I'm going to work on an issue, and then, I'm going to do ego work. I'm going to do shadow work, all this. But it's like defining yourself as separate from that which you are to work on that separate thing. And I guess if you want your paranormal tie-in, the reason I'm thinking about this is not just private emails, but even the woman we had on Paratopia, my friend from the pet shop, who had the hauntings that were related to her, if you remember that, So is it possible to project outwards? Is it possible to project an emotion outward and have it come back at you as some sort of paranormal phenomena, or some sort of, quote-unquote demon-looking thing, some amalgamation of your emotional energy? And yeah, I think truly, yes. I think when you set this thing called the ego, when you create this thing called the ego and set it outside yourself as something to correct or something that you are going to work on, then it can take on a life of its own in some rudimentary way. But is any of that real? It all sort of gets back to that basic thing of you are that. And so deal with you are that, not with I'm not really that. I've just got to work on these issues and then I'll be whole again. Well, no, you're either whole or you're not whole. And now I'm looking in the room again. Rojan says, well, in that case, is love an emotional response? Yeah, well, I mean, love can be an emotional response. It can also be the deep-rooted thing that you feel in your gut. It can be the thing that you feel toward your child. I mean, it can be a bunch of things, but I think the general sort of thing that it is, first and foremost, is an emotional, well, okay, let's say an emotional response to what? Isn't it an emotional response to your own yearning? I have a friend who has admitted to me recently that she's very lonely and she wants to, find her soulmate and get married and all of that. But she needs to find someone who can put up with her bullshit. And the answer to that, of course, is, I would think naturally the answer to that is, well, why don't you work on your bullshit first so, no one has to put up with it. And just saying that was a big revelation. Like, she had never thought of that before, which I find hard to believe, but I guess we don't. We don't think about these things, right? Because they hit too close to home. And this person, this is all going to be sort of a web tapestry. I don't know that any of it's going to make coherent sense, but it may in some roundabout way, because this person also said that she's not afraid of death in another conversation, not afraid of death, because she knows that we go on in some way, believes in not necessarily a heaven and hell, but some sort of afterlife scenario. And so I would say to that, confusingly, therefore, you are afraid of death, and all you've done is covered over it with an answer. The second you say, I know what happens when we die, I mean, again, that's the response of you wanting to live, wanting to carry on and not be annihilated when the body is terminated. And that's divorced from the fact of what happens after death. I mean, maybe there is an afterlife, maybe there isn't. That's not really the point. The point is you don't know, and the second that you say you know, then you can claim not to be afraid of death, but that is actually a fear reaction based on not knowing. Roshan says, no aliens tonight. No aliens tonight. Just humans here. So I guess the other thing I've been thinking about in terms of death is reincarnation. And I had this sort of wise-ass answer to something that I keep hearing, which is, well, if reincarnation is real, then how are there more people on the planet now than ever before? So I guess my sort of liberal wise-ass answer to that is because we keep killing off species on the planet every day, and so when those species get annihilated, there are less things to reincarnate into, therefore there are more humans. There you go. But really, and I think I touched on this on the live show or maybe the regular show, I'm not sure, but I think my experience might illustrate this to be true, or at least something to think about, which is that in the moment, in the now moment, all things are. And so when you tap into that moment from its perspective, that is to say, when the ego dies and you become that non-local, non-linear, non-time afflicted entity, all-encompassing entity, part of being that entity is realizing another life. So in this instance, for me, it was being a sun or a star, two other planets. And I was confused in the moment as to what I was experiencing. Was I experiencing another life, or was I experiencing an aspect of me right now that I somehow am not cognizant of in normal, everyday wake state? And the reason I was thinking that in that moment is because even though the ego dies, in that all-encompassing, all-time, all blah-blah-blah state, exists you as the ego, once again. But just as a piece of a larger perspective, if that makes sense. So the answer might be both. It might be that from a certain perspective, that death is merely the shifting of a perspective. The shifting, or, one eye closes and one eye opens, but the person with the eyes is the thing. And you only know that when you wake up to it, if that makes sense. But, I mean, again, that's all way out there and not at all close to home. It's like, why do we feel the need to answer these things, to say, what happens when we die? What is this all about? And we haven't even dealt with, what are we just yet? What else? I guess just the other sort of little bit of issue that's been on my mind, this is like therapy for me, I guess, just talking into a microphone, is something that comes up all the time, like when I, sort of make fun of or bash or whatever New Age, in spite of these words that I'm saying right now that sound very New Age, is I think the thing that they're missing is the Ken Wilber point, the thing that Ken Wilber really drove home and was correct on, which is that life doesn't just transcend, going to a so-called higher, broader, deeper level, whatever, isn't just about transcending what you were before. It's about transcending and including what you were before, so that when you go to the next level, you bring with you the best of the previous level. It still exists. Whatever is healthy and true still exists and is added on to. And so in physics, the correlation there is that the atom is transcended and included within the molecule, which is transcended and included within the cell, and so forth. So that's in physics. You don't get rid of the atom. You don't say, well, the atom isn't real. I have transcended, and you don't get that sort of arrogance. You transcend and you include it. And it's the same thing with spirituality. You transcend and include religion. There are kernels of transcendence within religion, but the religions themselves are not transcendent. And so you need to, for instance, shed the political dogma that is antiquated, and certain senses of morality which are antiquated. And so whatever the universal thing is there, that's what you bring with you when you transcend religion. But I think what all of this gets to is our struggle with permanence versus impermanence, right? I think this is really our deep down struggle, because on the one hand, we shun permanence, right? We say physicality bad, and New Age people say, well, we're going to transcend and not include into this higher state of reality. We're going to become light beings. We're going to become a new vibrational density or whatever it is. And the physical is not at all important. And of course, in ancient, Indian traditions, it was the same thing that, the physicality isn't important. And so now I'm going to, staple baloney to my balls to prove that I'm strong, or whatever it is. I've overcome this thing called the physical. But then when you realize, no, it's transcend and include, then maybe the physical is important. And when you wake up to the one moment, you've got to realize that all of the stuff that you are experiencing the points of view as are physical processes, and physical objects and organisms and the whole gamut. Spirit is not divorced from that. Spirit is that. So we shouldn't rush to want to die or rush to want to shed this mortal coil into some light density thingamahoozy. Should we? I mean, shouldn't we realize what things are first? And then what would that impermanence be? I mean, what would you be, a dream? Would all of your perspectives just change with the fluidity of a dream? Would anything be real at that point? Or would you just be, the thought of a crazy man over and over again, oohing and ahhing at your own scenarios? I mean, I don't know. I can't think of anything that doesn't sound masturbatory in that sense of nothing being real, Let me see. Is anyone saying anything on the message board that I need to respond to? The physical world is an amazing gift. It's just not enough for me by itself. It's funny because the other thing I've been hearing lately, that I've heard, and we've all heard through our lives, even from people who aren't involved in paranormal or New Age or any of that stuff, is that somehow Earth is a hell, or Earth is somehow lacking in some way. And it's a weird thing, isn't it? When you look around, it's like, on the one hand, it does feel like that, at least depending on your life, I suppose it feels like that. Maybe it doesn't. But even, the rich people have a hole in them that they need to fill, and the poor people are feeling the pressures of being poor. And so in economic terms, purely, everybody's in their own little hell. But you look at nature, and you look outside, and it's, like, pretty awe-inspiring, and it's pretty amazing, and I don't know what's hellish about it, really, except that a jaguar has claws. Maybe it's that everything's cute and cuddly until the claws come out. So I guess in that sense. But it's interesting. It's funny to think about nature in its raw form and whether or not Earth is a hell or whatever. If we feel as though we can handle it, if we've got the situation set up to our benefit where we're in control, then it's not a hell. Then you can observe it from a distance through binoculars, or you can observe it enough to understand the certain behaviors of certain species and inch your way up to them and sort of be accepted into them on some level. But then when the whale decides, the killer whale decides to be a killer whale and not, jump after the ball and do flips through the hoops, well, then it's a reminder that, no, there are other things at play here as well as sort of our setting it up that way. What's being said here? Nothing. So, I don't know. I don't know why I'm bothering to come on here and tell you all of this. I just feel like I interact with people enough about this stuff, and I read enough about it that I don't want to give a long-winded written response about everything, It just gets tedious after a while. And I don't think we're all coming from the same place, even if we're using the same words, and I think that that's a problem. And I don't think that the folks who say rationality bad really know what they're talking about, because rationality, too much rationality, too much of anything is bad, but again, transcend and include. Getting back to that, anything, for something to be real, for something to be, that is to say whole, that is to say holy, has to have all of the components that it has to have in it for that to be the case, and one of them has to be a rational anchor. Which is why, for instance, in my book and on these shows, when I talk about everything coming from nothingness, and I say, if you examine the word nothingness, if you think about nothing existing prior to all things, then you're left with the thing. What you're left with is a concept. The concept is nothingness. Concepts exist in intelligence. This intelligence exists by definition prior to any brain having existed. Therefore, nothingness is consciousness itself, is intelligence. And I build from there. And then people get stuck and say, well, but that doesn't prove anything. Well, it's not a proof of anything. What it is it's a way to see it rationally. It's a rational component. I think all these things have to have a rational component, or else they're just, silliness. Transcendent things are by their nature irrational, right? But one is on one end of the irrational spectrum and one is on the other. There's irrational by way of can't possibly happen, and there's irrational by way of, well, it's not something that you can get to the full experience of through rational processes, but it's something that can be understood by rational processes on a rational term. It's just that understanding doesn't get you anywhere, just like the menu is not the food sort of thing. The menu is a rational correlation to the food, but it's not the food itself. It's that sort of thing. And Noldwin says, someone else says, what does it mean to transcend, to rise above the contradictions and complexities of life? No, it doesn't, because this is where I think language is important. It's not that you can't rise above anything. You rising above is still you rising, and what are you transcending? Transcendence is transcendence of the self. So how does one transcend oneself? By not existing, which again is death. And of course, death is the thing that we all fear, to the extent that we will make up things about what happens when we die, to the extent that we will make up things that happen when we die while the body is alive as well. Death while the body remains alive, that is transcendence. And I guess the only leap of faith there is, what happens next? You can't define it, and you can't know. So truly, that's what death is. And you can only know whether that's good, bad, or indifferent when it happens, if that makes sense. So, it really is, it's the ultimate leap, isn't it? It's the ultimate leap into the abyss. And then Nodwin says, yeah, but the speck of dust thought always leaves me feeling like there's always more to learn. I'm not sure what that means. He says, not that nothing I do matters. He has that in quotes. Well, does anything you do matter? There's a question. Sure. Here's the thing. I think part of the confusion of these sorts of talkings or talking around things in terms of spirituality and psychology is that we're switching perspectives mid-dialogue, and we're not acknowledging that we're doing that. And I think that's always been the problem of so-called gurus and spiritual leaders and things like that, is that they will switch perspectives on you and not tell you they're doing that, and they might not even be aware of it, and then they just expect everyone to sort of get it, and everyone goes, huh? So, for instance, on one level, on the level of, the perspective of oneness itself, seen from the point of view of spirit playing through the object that it is, does what you do matter? Well, no. Not from that perspective, but you don't live that perspective. You live this day-to-day existence where what you do does matter. And so until that changes, you have to respect that, right? You have to at least acknowledge it. To just say it doesn't matter, and I'm not saying you're saying this, but people say this, to say, it doesn't matter, is to be living from the point of view of the menu. You're not somebody who knows what that means, because you're not somebody who's had the big experience. Or if you have had the big experience, you're not living the big experience. I've had the big experience, but I'm not living it. And so if I tell you, no, it doesn't matter what I do, well, that's not relevant. I'm lying, essentially, because I'm still here. I'm still living, in this monocular gaze. And so I think that's another problem with the New Age, which is they've got some of the menu, and they're all willing to talk about it like they're living it, and they're not living it. In fact, I don't think anyone who's living it would really be talking about it. I could be wrong about that, but it just strikes me as a truism. If people knew what happens after here, the world might be a better place, says Erosion. I don't know. I don't know about that. No, I don't think so. And here's why. Because again, this gets into switching perspectives. From the perspective of humans as we are now, there are certain things that we are going to do. We're going to be at war. We're in conflict with each other because we still see separation. I guess this is sort of the meat of what I'm saying, and this is the hard point to even articulate, which is that on the one hand, we've got conceptually, we understand, at least some of us understand conceptually, that there is this underlying oneness that is manifesting us as separate selves. And so we get that conceptually, and then we imagine what it would be like to live some of those tenets, or we try to incorporate some of what that means into our daily existence. But you either are that perspective of the thing manifesting separate selves, you either are living that perspective, that is you, who you are and what you are, or you're not. And if you're not, by nature, you're going to be in conflict. And so in the midst of that conflict, of course, is it better to live from those to live from that menu, to eat off that menu? Yes, of course it's better to eat off that menu. It's a healthier menu. But ultimately, we got to sort of figure out here that that's not the end of the definition of what a human being is, and that the definition continues on. We transcend and include that definition into this first-person perspective of spirit playing through its manifestations. Now, whether that comes at physical death, I mean, that definitely can come through life when the self dies. I've experienced that. Can it happen when you physically die, or does it necessarily happen? We don't know, right? We just don't know is the answer. I can speculate on that, but and my speculation is it doesn't have to. I mean, why would it? It doesn't have to in life. I mean, this notion that you die and then, are given all the answers, like, the ending of Lost. Look how fulfilled we were by that, right? Well, no. I don't think that it follows that you die and then you're given all the answers, or then and then you rest in that knowledge. I mean, who's to say? But I don't know. By the way, if anyone wants to call in and talk to me about this or about anything, the phone number is 323-580-5757. I guess part of the thing that also bothers me about New Age thinking is that it's somehow better than religion. That somehow, because they see through religion, right? They see through the dogmas and the stupidity and the politics and all of that, and therefore are a better replacement system or a more whole system. And it's not. I mean, again, from one angle, it sort of is. I mean, it's certainly better to see through all of the nonsense of religion, but from another angle, it's not better to replace it with other nonsense. And that's what we're quick to do. We're quick to replace because, ultimately, like I said, we want to live. We don't want to die, and death is the thing that is required here to experience that transcendence. So we don't want to die. We want to keep our sense of self intact, even as we're moving through time and evolving in some sense, and evolving, out of old definitions of things. If we could find a way to evolve out of old definitions of things and not into new definitions, I think that might be key. But once again, isn't it ironic that we want, impermanence? We don't like the rigidity of the church, right? We don't like the rules, the regulations, the things that don't make sense now that may have made sense to some culture at some point back when. We don't like that permanence, but we demand permanence when it comes to the entity experiencing this and the entity evolving. We've got to have this permanent entity, this soul. People have mentioned soul at the beginning of this chat. We've got to have this soul that moves through time and isn't touched by it, or is somehow added on to by its experiences on Earth. And again, that may exist, it may not, but why? But the very fact that we latch onto that is because we want to exist. We want to keep existing and not actually find out for ourselves. Because again, to find out for yourself is to not exist, is to not find out. The finding out reveals itself when you're not there. But that moment of not being there is also a trick because, like I said, there's that moment of not being there, but then ultimately you're there. It's just that you're recontextualized into the larger scene. If that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, let me know. Florence says, my take on it is that this is a place to find your answers because, in my opinion, it's you carry with you what you know and what you don't know, which is why reincarnation happens. And then someone else says, I agree. Well, but here's the problem. Who cares what your take is? Who cares what your opinion is? And I don't mean that in like a, who cares, Flo, what your opinion is? Who cares what my opinion is? Who cares what like, there's an answer or there isn't, right? So there's a truth of it or there isn't. So why would you have an opinion on something that you can't really know? And I guess what I'm saying is the reason that you have an opinion on something you can't know is because you want to exist. Because Flo wants to exist. Because Jeremy wants to exist. We don't want to die. We fear that death. And that death is, ironically, in the face of fear, the thing that needs to happen to find out. I guess what I'm saying is you can find out while you're alive. And then maybe erroneously I go on to say that you can live there. Maybe you can't. Maybe you can only experience it and come back and babble about it into a microphone. Nodwin says, I'm hoping when I die there will at least be a remembrance of previous lives to then transcend and include the new life. But, again, let's go back to that ultimate perspective. Ultimately, there is no time. So everything has already happened. From one perspective, everything is always happening all the time. That's the timeless moment. And so from that perspective, there are no past lives. There's just this, no more so than, the waves are the ocean, that sort of thing. The wave crashes back into the ocean and then realizes that it was ocean all along. Well, so from the point of view of the ocean all along, the waves riding on it are it. In other words, there is no illusion from that perspective of the separation of these waves. And in this analogy, let's say that these waves are your different reincarnated selves. Picture a bunch of waves in a row, and that would be you at different periods in time. But you're actually the ocean. So from the point of view of the ocean, those things are all happening at once. So there is no reincarnation. There's just the ocean doing this. The ocean breaking up its one consciousness into many, and that's what it is. That's what life is. That's what it all is. I mean, that is what it all is. Because this nothingness, this consciousness, the moment you say that there is this thing, it's existing, right? Once it has existence, it has form. So what does the ultimate consciousness have? It has, ultimately, all forms. It's breaking itself up into all of these different forms with their own sets of intelligence. It's subdivided, basically, and it has no choice. It's not like it's doing this because it's a grand god in the sky, going hocus pocus and making this happen. It has no choice. This process is what life is. But we don't live that point of view, right? So once again, New Age stickler that I am, getting back to that. So it doesn't matter if you understand that explanation of what life is. It has no relevance in how you actually live life, because unless you take that plunge and understand it for yourself, as your experience of the self, the only meaning it can have for you is to be able to speak it and try to live by some of the tenets that you find within there, and then go preach to other people about how they're doing shit wrong. Because that is what the perspective that we currently have does, the perspective of separate self-entities. They want to remain themselves, so they create a barrier, and they extract bits of knowledge from other people and other, and events that appeal to them to fortify themselves, and then they project into death this future for themselves. I'm going to die and I'm going to become X. I'm going to go to heaven. I'm going to reincarnate. I'm going to whatever. I mean, this is what we do. I mean, at all times of our lives, we're wanting to exist. That's, dare I say, that's a fundamental flaw? I don't know if that's a flaw, but that's just what we do. I mean, that's just what we do. And so I think it's really important to be aware of what you're doing at that level, and not be insulted by it and not, build a barrier and say, well, I never, because we're all doing it. I mean, I'm as guilty as the next guy, and I'm the dude talking about all this crap. Nodwin says, well, first of all, Kung Fu Jesus says, we're all just waves, man. And see, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And I know you're just being cute there, but this is what people say. They just sort of cut the conversation short by saying, well, we're all just blank. It's all just oneness, so it doesn't matter. Like even in paranormal world, right? We say, well, ultimately, all of this is one consciousness subdivided into all this other stuff, and so that's what aliens are, and so, it's just us talking to ourselves in another form. And then we rest there arrogantly and say, well, I figured it out. Well, that doesn't tell you anything. That's not how you're living your life. That's just a truism, maybe, that you've latched onto and are speaking the words of, but it doesn't actually mean anything, and it doesn't have any meaning for whatever that other intelligence is. It's something that you can understand on one level, but then that's switching out of the perspective from what you're actually living. And how you're actually living ain't that. Let's see. Nodwin says, if your perspective becomes all things, it's the same thing as nothingness and everything. Yes. And Flo says, so what's the point in even talking about it? Why do we... I'm sorry, this thing is scrolling up on me. What's the point even talking about it? Why do we even have to kill the ego or die within ourselves? We're here to live, and if we are okay with how we are living, who's to say we are wrong in how we are living? No one. If you're okay in how you're living, no one should tell you not to live how you're living. But I would say that it's, from my perspective, that's no more or less relevant than saying to the caterpillar, you've got to climb into this cocoon here and become a butterfly, because the caterpillar can say, well, why? Why should I have to do that? I'm happy being a caterpillar. Well, ultimately, the reason why is because that's part of your natural process, and if you don't do it, you're going to die off. And I think that that's where we're at. I think that you personally may be happy, or think that you are, but underlying this perspective of us is turmoil. Even a psychologist will tell you that the most healthy you can be is a lower end on the neurosis scale. So you're never not going to be neurotic. Is there a perspective that transcends that? Yeah, I think there is. So do you have to go to it in your lifetime? No, probably you don't have to go there. But I think there is a repercussion for the species eventually. Whether it be through, natural disaster, through, the fact that we have these desires and these unsatiable or insatiable appetites. We're going to overpopulate, we're going to blow ourselves up, we're going to X, Y, and Z. All these sorts of fear scenarios. They exist because we do, and they're going to come true one of these days, or one of them is, because that is the natural outcome of not getting into the cocoon and getting right. But you can totally, of course, have fun diving into your desires and all of that on this level. And there's nothing wrong. Again, there's nothing wrong. I'm not shunning the level that we're on, the level that we're living. In fact, I think you can appreciate it more when you transcend it, because once again, it's transcend and include. My only point is that this ain't the top. This ain't the top of the heap. This isn't the transcendent state that we're living. And neither are the myriad, menus that we put before ourselves and pick from. But there is one, and unfortunately it requires this death of self. And I think once you get there, you don't ask, it all becomes clear. It's like, well, why would you want that? Well, in the same way that a butterfly is flying, from the caterpillar's perspective, that might be scary, and who the hell wants to look like that and do that and all that. But once you actually have access to flight, there's no question that you both want to walk around on the ground and fly, transcend and include. Arjun says, so here's the thing, Jer, bring this all back to love. Why? I've still got like an hour left or something, right? Let's see. And Nod wins the prize. Nodwin says, I guess the trick is to allow growth of perspective while retaining a sense of self somehow. No, you don't win the prize. No, it's give it all up. Let it all go. You've gotten to the point where you're now at the door, and the guy with the beard, you're asking him, hey, guy with the beard, how do I leave the Matrix? And the answer is, it was within you all the time, Dorothy. Click your heels, or whatever. The answer is, all of that thing that you thought was growth getting you to this moment is completely irrelevant from this point on, because now the only thing you need to do is die. And that's, I think, a harder message to hear, probably for those who believe that they have been on a path or believe that they have been growing, than it would be for somebody who hasn't done that. Because when you believe you're growing, you want to flower. You're not growing for somebody to say, cut yourself off at the roots. You're growing because you're growing into something. But the ultimate answer is cut yourself off at the roots. And I think that that's a very hard message for people growing to hear. Let's see. Susan Brown says, always strive to retain your sense of self. Individuality is extremely important for the spirit. Oneness may be a sham. Oneness may be a sham. Anything may be a sham. There's one way to find out. Always strive to retain your sense of self. Well, I don't think that you have to strive to retain your sense of self, do you? I mean, that's what you are. You are that. So if you are striving to retain your sense of self, what you're accidentally saying there is don't grow at all, because your sense of self as you currently are is all you need. And if that's true, then that's true across the board, right? So that's true for the Dalai Lamas and the George Bushes of the world. Just however shallow or deep you are is irrelevant. Just be that. If you're not saying that, then, I mean, I assume you would want at least growth education-wise, right? You would agree with that, maybe? I mean, if you agree that people need to grow in some way, then again, they're growing towards something. They're evolving towards something. But the trick is that impetus to evolve, that impetus to grow, I think that's in all of us to some degree. But again, at the end of the day, the answer is cut it off at the root. And I think the impetus is actually to cut it off at the root, and we trick ourselves into believing that the impetus is to grow into something. Because I think, again, we've got this innate sense of what we truly are that we repress and we cover over. And in that repression and that covering over, we misinterpret it to mean other things. And so we say that we're growing and we're evolving and we're becoming. But that's a misinterpretation of what the gut feeling is, right? But it's a natural misinterpretation because, again, it's not like there's a blame in this because an animal wakes up, an ape wakes up into a man, say, or a woman, and the man or the woman look around and they mimic what they see. They mimic what their senses are telling them in their behavior. They bring into that higher mental state two things. One, the animal, which they just formerly were, the instincts and all of that. the drives, and they bring into that higher transcendent and including mental state the observations that their senses pick up. They also, incidentally, bring in and pattern their behavior on their very brain chemistry. The orderliness of the brain, the orderliness inherent in physical being gets emulated into how we order our lives. Let's see. Susan, Nodwin says, Susan, I'm not sure if oneness is the ultimate answer either. It's a fact, yes. Well, no, the answer is all of transcend and include. So the answer is, the answer is the question. How do we be our fullest sense of self? Now, if that fullest sense of self is as an individual, as Susan is saying, okay, if that fullest sense of self requires shedding that individual completely, okay, or if it requires shedding it for a brief moment in which it gets recontextualized into a larger tapestry, okay. I mean, don't we, instead of making proclamations about things, don't we, in opinions, don't we want to actually find out? Or no? Because you're right, it could be a sham, and certainly people say things about oneness all the time that are shams. There are whole cottage industries based on this. There are religions based on this. Sometimes that sham, though, isn't a purposeful hoax. Sometimes that sham is the simple fact that you have this experience and you write it down or you tell people about it, and then they live vicariously through that. Or they try to set up a system that happened to you after the fact. For example, when I have that energy that moves the body around and does these yoga postures and, Tai Chi looking things and whatever, if I were to write that all down and say, here's a yoga system that will get you to that place, that would be a lie. And I might not be doing that, making that lie on purpose. It's just that I'm mistaking the fact that the system comes after the fact. And so you can't use that system to get there, if that makes any sense. But why do we believe those things? I mean, it takes two to make a sham, right? It takes the believer and it takes the believable, the guy we want to believe. So that's something to think about, too. Susan says, resist any oneness doctrine. One of us. I'll agree with you, Susan. I would say resist all doctrine, period. Oneness doctrine or any sort of doctrine. I would say, again, find out for yourself what is correct. If you're going to say it's not true and just ignore it, well, that's a deficiency on your end. But if you're going to say, all right, I'm interested enough to find out, and I'm going to try to, then you'll take the plunge and you'll find out whether what you're saying is correct or not. But just believing one way or the other about anything ain't going to get you anywhere. Maybe nothing will get you anywhere. It's like you run the risk, even in just talking about this stuff, of setting up an answer, and the answer is always going to be the problem. Susan says, creativity can develop better from individuals. That's the main point, not from a self-thought or dogma. A set thought or dogma. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm not arguing about creativity at all here, so maybe. Nodwin says, but this is just me talking. I couldn't get the oneness to work. Yeah, well, no. Again, there is no you to get the oneness to work. You have to dissolve, and oneness becomes the case. When oneness becomes the case, everything becomes the case. I mean, it's this weird thing. The oneness isn't just the point of view of spirit playing through. There was certainly that point of view, the point of view of spirit playing through the object that is also it, but it's also at that very same moment all of those objects also. I don't know what's more creative than that. There's actually a call, if I can believe this. Caller, you're on the air.
Hey,
Hello?
Jeremy, it's me, Nodway.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, yeah, I just had this written down, but I did have something where it when I was younger, where there were a few times where my sense of self did, it just kind of floated away. I wrote that down here. Yeah, I was looking through I was like about 6 years old, looking through a back window, and there's this bright sunlight coming through, and you know how you see the dust motes floating around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it just somehow that scene just triggered something, and I just felt like I was falling away from myself, like my identity, or I guess his sense of self is what the terminology keeps being used. Is it just vanished, like it wasn't there anymore. I didn't, had no idea what was happening, and in that situation, I wasn't me anymore. So it's like I don't know what.
Well, what was there? Just blankness? Was there no sense of anything? Like how did that? What became of you? Let me ask it that way.
All I saw was I felt the sensation of falling, but not like jarring, but just like kind of floating or falling slowly, and it was dark all around me, and there were I guess in the distance maybe there's like small little pinpricks of light. So, but then
So when you say
I don't know
that,
how long.
when you say that your sense of self is going away, but you were still seeing something, what does that mean? When there was still a you there to see something, right?
Yeah, there was something there to see something, but it wasn't. I don't know how to describe it correctly, but it's just that. I don't know if it's like there's just like a complete distance from a sense of self, or I don't know how to describe it really, but it was, my perspective wasn't me anymore. It wasn't. I know at the time I couldn't remember like what my name was or that kind of thing. So. Mm-hmm. And this happened like 3 or 4 times when I was smaller, and the last time it happened, I was in high school, and I was actually walking through the front door, and then it suddenly happened, and everything around, like I suddenly had 2 perspectives. One was, seeing the hallway and on like people around me like frozen in place, and then the other was like the darkness all around me with the small, little tiny lights in the distance. So it was, in that case, it was like I had 2 perspectives at the same time. So that's the only time that happened.
Was there an emotion attached to any of this?
Well, it would always abruptly end in like my whole body would just kind of jerk, like wow, something really scary just happened, and everything would just jerk back into place, and time would move on, and all that. But that was the only time it happened where I was around other people, and I saw that they were all frozen, and I was frozen. So
So
I
where
don't know
was
what to make of it other than.
Where was your perspective or your sight? When you were frozen and everybody was frozen, where were you seeing that from? Out of your own eyes, or where were you? No, I was seeing a side profile of myself, and then the people beyond that were just that had been walking around, and everything was frozen in place. So. So it's kind of like an out of body, but everybody was frozen thing. Out of body, out of time sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you say you've had that happen how many times?
Well, the case where I was able to see myself that only happened once. But when I was younger, like around 6, that's probably like 10 years before, I would say I would have the moment of like the loss of, who I was, like who am I, kind of thing. And then, you suddenly see this vision of like blackness and nothing.
So the blackness and the nothing, that wasn't something in the room, that was what the room became. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what my perspective became. Yeah, it's like I don't know if I was somewhere else, or it just, that's whatever, became like that, or it was,
but when you came to, did everything...
Even then, there's like in the back of my mind, I could still see the vision of, like, way in the back of my mind, I could still see the sunlight, but I don't know, it's just weird, like how the sense of self was gone, like I was falling away from my body and everything else, my identity, and I have no idea why it happened. It's just...
Right. When you came out of the blackness experience, did things dissolve into being again? Or, I mean, how did it come back to normal?
It kind of like dissolving, but more like it faded back into, like, my full focus had gone back to me, and there was like almost like a rubber band had just jerked me back into, zipped me back into my body. Yeah, just really jarring. And afterwards I would feel like, I had been thrown, or I fell off of something, like you had fallen.
Well, what did you make of that when it happened?
Well, when I was younger, it was, I don't know that I made anything of it. It was just, like something strange. The first time it happened, I thought that was really interesting. Like, and I wanted to see if I could make it happen again and make it last longer, because I kept being jerked back. But then, over time I forgot about it, and after I'd made it happen a few more times, and then when it happened again, like, many years later, I just had this feeling of nostalgia, like, oh yeah, I remember that happening, and then suddenly it happened. Like I was somehow able to make my brain do this, backflip or whatever, and then it triggered it again.
But you had other, I don't know, mind tricks. I don't know what to call them, perspective shifts, something. I mean, it seems like from what you were saying when you called in last time, that maybe there is something about you that you don't understand, right? That it's not just, I mean, it's not like your sense of self died and this happened. It's like you have visions of things and you had this happen. So there's something about you, right? Your mind, your brain, something that does this now and then, right? You think that's fair to say?
Yeah, that could be it, yeah. So,
I mean, that doesn't explain anything to even say that, but I just find it interesting, But it sounded like when you called last time that you didn't, you weren't even at that point willing to call it an experience of any kind. You were willing to call it, a dream or hallucination or something.
Yeah,
but when you look at all this stuff, you must at some point look at all this stuff and see a pattern.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I did the Project Core, and I just tried to write down everything I could think of. So, I'm looking at it now, and it just is, there's too much stuff.
Have you not thought of it that way before?
Not really. I mean, I just thought, there's like a couple things, but they're not that interesting. But if I combine everything together, it just looks crazy. Yeah, there's just too much stuff. Like seeing a ghost of my grandfather when I was younger, even though he was still alive. It was some kind of phantom or whatever, and then
Did he end up dying shortly thereafter? Was it like a herald of something?
Well, I would say 3 years later, but he'd already lost his leg from diabetes at that point. And what I saw was just him. He had to walk across my doorway to get to when I was staying over at his place to get to the bathroom, and I saw him do this, and I didn't think at first. For a split second, I didn't think anything of it, and then I looked again and realized, he looks completely whole. He doesn't have a crutch like he always does. Doesn't have a missing leg, and he looked younger. So, yeah, that was weird. But.
Did you ever say anything to anybody about that in your family?
No, I didn't. I had at least one other thing happen in that same house, but I told them about it, and they just thought it was something, completely natural. It was just like a ball of light, but they thought it was just somebody's flashlight, and he was kind of on edge, because he thought someone was sneaking around his farm to hunt something at night. But it just wasn't a flashlight. It was like a self-contained, ball of light. Because how flashlights always make that, little tunnel of light that expands.
Right.
After, yeah. But, yeah, I kept always talking about the oneness thing, and it reminded me of the weird experiences, I didn't feel like losing sense of who I was or what I was, even. And then the time when it seemed to freeze everything.
And who do you talk to about these things when they happen? Anybody?
I used to talk with my ex-girlfriend about it, with a few of the things, but not everything.
When your grandfather came to you, did he say anything? Was this a vision in your head? Was it out in the room?
No, this was actually out in the room. I just walked across and into the bathroom. I heard absolutely no noises, and that was it. I just tried to go to sleep after that. So
see, that would have freaked me out, because I would have been thinking, okay, Grandpa's going to die now, and then if he doesn't, why did that happen?
Well, see, I actually tried not to think that way. I tried to think maybe it's a ghost of someone, one of my great grandfathers or something that I never met, that looked similar somehow. I just tried to jump to that, or.
Have you noticed anything, I don't know, useful or about the totality of these types of experiences? I mean, is there a pattern that you make out of them where you go, okay, now I know why I'm seeing these things, or now, is there any sort of, I don't know, deeper message or pattern to the totality of them?
Well, in general, it kind of showed me that there may not be such a thing as coincidence or that kind of thing. I mean, there was at a time when I was trying to make a big decision. It was a big life decision. I was I don't know, I guess confronted, but I kept trying to turn around and see it, but I could never. Whatever it wasn't letting me see it. I just couldn't continue to feel it behind me. Well, it wanted to. It said it wanted to help me, that I put myself in an impossible position, and it could give me, wisdom or the knowledge of what I need to do to get through everything. And I, being, of course, I was raised like Christian, and I just immediately thought like this is something dark and like trying to trick me. And you know, as soon as I started thinking that, like it just it felt like it was you know, angry and hurt and left. And I would have just dismissed the whole thing, but you know, like the night after that, there's something that even now it caused me to have a phobia of something. So,
which was what?
Well, this is completely indistinct, but the three, you know, dark shadows were you know, hovering over me, and they, you know, I tried to just dismiss it and like roll over, like I usually do, and then there's, you know, pretty soon after that, I ended up, you know, getting really relaxed and on my back, and then just so that my eyes shut open because I felt, you know, hands on my throat, and you know, like I couldn't breathe, and then I looked and saw that, you know, they were hovering over me, just these like blobs of shadow, and felt that. This is the worst part. Is that like I felt them. You know, somehow I couldn't see anything distinct, but they somehow caused me to feel like they were slitting my throat open.
Huh.
Yeah.
What time of night was this?
I would say like probably 1:30 or so, around there.
And what was your reaction to that when you felt as though, I mean, did you start to, if someone were cutting my throat open, I would jump, you know?
Yeah, I just, you know, at first I couldn't move. I was just like too scared, but then yeah, I did like kind of push and try to get up, and then I finally managed it. But, yeah, as soon as I was able to move, they were not there anymore. I mean, I still felt like menaced or like watched after that, but I just finally was able to go to sleep. And I, you know, since then I don't sleep directly on my back, and you know, sometimes I'll just feel a twinge of like, you know, I wish my throat was covered, or you know, I had some kind of protection over it or something.
Huh. Wow. We have another call. Do you want to hang on the line? Maybe they want to talk to you. I don't know.
Okay. I didn't want to like screw up the whole discussion, but
no, heck, I'm just flailing around here with some thoughts. Caller number 2. Hello. Hello.
Sure.
Oh my God, is this Wine Girl?
It is. In full fashion. But I really like, this is a good caller, but what about your star thing? Like, I don't know, like you had like a star experience and you didn't go into the complete detail as the caller did, but I think you should.
Of being a sun or being a star or whatever?
Well, yeah, no, like what happened?
What?
What happened? Because you talked about it a little bit, and then the caller got on and talked about his experience, you know, and I think we should...
well, I mean, basically, this was in the middle of my giant I am experience. I feel like I've probably talked about it so much that people already are familiar with it, but in the midst of this larger experience of experiencing all these various perspectives at the same time, I started to sort of, like, I would key in on these certain things, you know, and they all had the same feel to them of being spirit playing through itself, playing through its objects, with the exception of the perspective of a star, which seemed to have its own sense of consciousness. included in that, but apart from it. Like, it seemed to be happy giving life to the nearest rock that could take it, seemed to be aware of all the other stars in the sky. They seemed to have their own sense of communication, very much alone, but not lonely, just sort of alone in the sky with itself, immensely powerful. I mean, I don't even know how to describe it, but the two things that were weird about it were, well, one, obviously experiencing a star as a conscious being as opposed to an object or just some fire. But two, having the sense that will be me in another life, or maybe that is some aspect of me right now that I don't understand, that I'm not in tune with. And so that was the point of my reincarnation bit, which is that maybe both are true. Maybe if you switch your perspective, this thing that you think you reincarnate into and the things that you think you've reincarnated out of are all happening simultaneously. And it's just a matter of, switching eyes and going left eye, right eye, left eye, right eye. But from our perspective, that looks like death, rebirth, death, rebirth.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
It really does. So thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and get off the line now.
Okay. Love you, wine girl.
Mm-hmm.
She's skeptical about the love. Nodwin, are you still there?
Yes, I was just having a good thought, but now...
Now I ruined it.
Oh, crap. Oh, well. Oh, yeah, I was just thinking, I've suspected that for a while, that, like, there's just, other aspects of each of us that's just flitting around and we're not aware of it. So...
Right. Yeah. Well, what is your normal, everyday take on life, the universe, and everything? I mean, are you a practical person normally? Are you more, new agey in your thinking? Or, I mean, you sound like not. You sound like it pains you to even be talking about this stuff.
I guess it did kind of bother me to think about it really seriously. Like, it's not, never being able to really talk to anyone about it just kind of pushes it all to, you don't even bother to think about this, or, you just only think about this when you're alone, or, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really think of myself as New Age at all. It just try to see, that there is a spiritual side to things, and or if not that, then just, more to it than the surface value. More to reality.
Mm-hmm. But does that have any meaning for you, or do you not care?
No, it does have some meaning for me, that idea or spiritual ideas, and I just try to keep things open so some new things can come in and I can try to learn. So.
Right. That are good. Well, are there any other experiences that you want to talk about, or I don't know how much you want to delve into yourself?
Well, I mean, the rest of them were similar to the encounter with the Birdman, and it just, with him it was there was no way I could deny that it had happened. It was too intense and too real. There's similar things that like that afterwards, but there's just, I feel like I can still dismiss it, like it's just too silly and too fantastical to be real, like it couldn't be.
Well, those are the fun things. You got to share that with the class.
Well, I think I can do one because it's. I feel like I was left some kind of like hints or, well, actually there were literal footprints in the snow afterwards, like the next day, that were, I couldn't explain it. You know, it was as if, okay, first what actually happened was I wake up from being dead asleep and feeling like I have to look out the window because of what and I don't know why. Maybe I'd seen it like right before I woke up and that's why, but I don't remember. And I'm trying to not to wake up my girlfriend and my son. He's very young. He's in the same room with us. And yeah, I look across the street to there's a park across there. It's the place where I was staying then, and I saw this being that was just shifting around into different looks. You know, like, you know, one second it would just be a guy, and then, you know, a few seconds later he had morphed into, like, you know, some kind of weird looking thing, like maybe could be what people keep calling the gray alien, or whatever it is. But then I got like a psychic impression, like, you know, it never comes in words, but like it was similar to how the Birdman communicated with me. But like showing me and impressing upon me, like, you know, I can look however I want and you'll never know.
Well, if Richmond's out there listening, you should call in at any second now. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh. But yeah, I feel threatened because I had a really young son at the time, and he can't even, you know, really tell me if something happens or. Of course, I never talked with him about it. I never have. But yeah, the next day we went out.
There was some sort of menace in that message, like we could be anywhere and you'll never know, and that was
smiling. He was like he was laughing at me, but you know, he's just kind of standing there, smirking and morphing around, and you know, but. Yeah, I don't remember anything beyond that, like just seeing him in the snow across the street through the window. Like,
but
I don't know
your
why
initial
it was
reaction
so distant like that. But
your initial reaction is that this is a dream?
Well, yeah, that you know, it must be some kind of like I just woke up and it must be some kind of like hallucination, you know, like why did everything happen in that just that way, and I saw it just that way where I had to, you know, get up, sit up, and, you know, peek through the cracks of the blinds in order to see it.
Mm-hmm.
It was weirded out and bothered by it, but then the next day I thought, you know, I'm totally crazy. You know, that's obviously got to be what it is. I'm just crazy. And I went with my, you know, we had to go get groceries because the snow was so bad. We had to just go ahead and walk over and get some groceries, which isn't that far away from there. And on the way back from that, you know, I had looked in the park before we left, and there's absolutely nothing, like no footprints or anything. And but then on the way back from the store, I went through like a shortcut behind some buildings, and there in the like right under a couple of trees were, you know, some really distinct footprints, like of a small child, but barefoot. And I thought, you know, this is impossible. Like, how would anyone let their kid wander this far from any houses, you know, with no shoes on? You know, it's definitely like, you know, between the age of 4 and 6 at the oldest. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, it's just like him leaving evidence to tell me, like, you know, maybe you're not crazy. And my son actually saw them and he just thought it was funny, like, you know, he even stepped in a few of the footprints, like try to follow the path.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't lead anywhere. Just like, no, it didn't lead anywhere. It just kind of went around the tree and went over to another tree, and that was it.
Hmm.
Like there was nothing leading to it or away from it. So.
Going back to, you know, the message, do you think it's fair to say that it was menacing you on purpose, or do you think it was interpretive? Like, was it just smiling, being like, look, you'll never know where I am, you'll never know who I am? And then you could have interpreted that differently?
It could have been, like, how I interpreted and how I meant. I think it could have just been just playing, you know, like this is a game.
Hmm. Well, that's interesting. And then how did the vision actually, maybe you said this and I missed it, but how did it go away?
Actually, I don't remember. I mean, that's the only part I remember clearly is just seeing him across the street in the park. Huh.
That's interesting. I had nothing like that, but when I was I slept over at Tim Banal's this weekend, and it was the first night or the second night I was there, I woke up because there was, I don't know if I woke up because of the light or if I just sort of woke up and flipped over, and in the midst of flipping over, saw that it was light outside the window, and I thought, oh, he's got a lot of woods back there, so I thought, well, motion detector lights must have gone off, and I should probably get up, and there's probably like a deer out there. I should go check it out, but I was too tired, so I was like, screw it, I'm not going to bother. Went to sleep, and then told him the next day, and he said, well, there are no motion detector lights. So there are no motion detector lights, and when I went back up into the bedroom, I saw that the window, the shade is closed, and there's an air conditioner in it. So it doesn't make sense that there would have been light coming through there. But that when the way that the sun hit that, it created the same sort of orange-yellow glow that I saw. So it's just interesting to me that this bright light coming through the window was completely consistent with how light was coming in the morning. And that it must have been pretty bright because I didn't actually have the shade drawn. But I don't have any memory of anything other than that, so that's it. So I look at something like that and I go, you know, could that have been a dream? Could that have just been like a waking hallucination in between sleeping and turning over? Yeah, but then why was it so specific and perfect to the actual physics of the room, you know? Even in ways that I didn't know because I hadn't paid attention to whether the shade was drawn or not, or if there was an air conditioner in the window, or, you know, how light came into the window. But it all made perfect sense in reality, as it did, you know, in the night. So why would there be that consistency if it was a dream? But if it wasn't a dream, what the hell was it? Certainly didn't wake anybody else up, you know. I don't know. Just throwing that out there. Well, Nodwin either got the call dumped or he dumped me. I'm not sure which. But anyway, thank you for calling in, sir. All right. What else have we got? Do I have anything else? I've got a half hour to play with. Should I just go? Is that it? Does anyone else want to call in? The number is 323-580-5757. I guess I could just go on and on. You know, I'm backing up and looking at questions, and I don't know. I mean, some of them are like, I might as well not even be talking. Ain't that always the way? It's, you know, question. This is the problem with all this stuff, is that you say it over and over again, and people want another way out. You know, they want reality to conform to them being alive. You know, individuality is everything, and all that. And actually, Susan, here's something interesting about the individuality bit. It's an individual process. So in the whole, you know, death of self, there is no mass cultural way to do that I can think of, anyway, or that has been tried and achieved. So in that sense, it is an individual the hero's journey, as it were, is an individual journey, is an individual undertaking. It's just that at the end of it, you have to let go. You have to let go of everything to see what the truth is. And then that fear of saying that oneness is a sham and the individual is everything. I mean, you'll see whether that's true or not in that moment. Because right now, and that's just a fear that you have. It's not meaningful in any way. Except, I mean, is it? I mean, do you think I'm wrong in saying that? Because it isn't based on anything. It's just based on what you think it means to give up and to die. But what you think it means isn't necessarily reflective of reality. Nodwin says his phone died. Jerry, you want me to call back? And Susan agrees. Yay, we agree on something. Nodwin, yeah. I mean, if you want to call back, yeah, definitely call back. I feel privileged that you actually want to talk about this stuff with me, because it sounds like it's actually paining you to do. So I think it's great that you are. I think it's really interesting, especially that last bit about, I don't know if you want to call it a shapeshifter or, was it changing your perception of it, or was it actually physically changing itself? Whatever the case is, I think these sort of concepts of either or maybe don't apply, because the more you see things like that, like Jeff with his shrouded guy, where his initial experience with the shrouded guy, if you remember, his voice was changing. Sometimes it sounded like Jeff, sometimes it sounded female, sometimes it sounded male, sometimes it sounded young, sometimes it sounded old. I mean, so the message there is, that perhaps the anti-message is what I've been talking about, right? Form doesn't matter. But in some sense, that things are more fluid, and I don't know what the hell it's saying, frankly. What do I know? I'm a human. I'm not an alien. Nodwin says, I think you have to make it through oblivion to get anywhere. Yeah, well, the analogy I use in the book, I think everyone will see this, is the mask in The Abyss. If you've ever seen the movie The Abyss, they are wearing these liquid oxygen masks. So basically, picture a tank surrounding your face filled with liquid, and you're told to breathe because it's the proper components of oxygen and whatever goes into what we breathe in liquid form, and you'll live. And not only will you live, you'll be able to scale the depths of the ocean. But everyone resists because if you breathe liquid, your instinct tells you you'll die. But no, you won't die, you'll live. But you have to take that leap of faith. And that's what we're talking about here. The death of self is really this leap of faith. Does the self die? Well, it gets properly contextualized. But, do you want that is one question, because in the improperly contextualized thing, we're in control. The problem is we're not really in control. That's a neurotic outcome of this sense of self that we live. And so what's the outcome of a neurotic outcome or a psychotic outcome? A psychotic break or a neurotic break? Well, it's going to be psychosis or neuroses. It's going to be, tyranny and the death of us in some, physical way. It's going to manifest itself physically, because that's what we do. I mean, that's just what we do. So is it better to cling to that, or is it better to breathe the liquid oxygen and swim the depths and see what's there? I think Nodwin is back. Nodwin?
Hello?
Hello. Nodwin, you're on.
Okay. Sorry about that. I didn't realize my phone was dying.
Let me just say this.
Hello?
Let me just answer Susan. She's asking if any physical bodily differences when I woke up the next day at Banal's after the strange light. No, I didn't notice anything other than, as Jeff had, noted, that I was really tired for no apparent reason. And that was it. I was, I guess maybe unnaturally tired, but I also had been eating a bunch of junk food, so that can contribute to unnatural tired. But no, I didn't notice anything, but then I didn't look for anything because I didn't think about it. I thought that his lights had gone on and a deer walked by. And it wasn't until that night that I noticed, because I don't spend any time up in that bedroom. So when I was like going to the bathroom to get ready for bed that, the second night, I noticed the shade was drawn and the air conditioner was in the window. And I thought, well, that's weird, because how could light be pouring in through that? And then when I got up the next day, I saw how light was coming into that window, and it was completely consistent with what I'd seen. So it was like, a day removed by the time I actually thought anything weird might have happened. But anyway, I'm sorry. Nodwin.
Oh, hey. Well, yeah, I don't think I've ever had, after an experience or whatever, to have physical marks or anything. Is that what she was asking? Or...
she was asking me if I had any physical bodily differences when I woke up the next day after seeing that light up in All's house. But I guess that could apply to you as well, if you noticed anything, marks or anything like that.
No, I just kind of meant in general, it's not. I don't think I've ever seen that. So.
Well, were you even thinking in those terms, or were you just thinking, this is a dream, I must be crazy? I mean, you listen to paranormal shows, right? How long have you been sort of listening to these types of shows, and at what point did you maybe think, at least to rule it out, that this could be what's happening to you?
Well, I've definitely been listening for at least 6 years, I think. For a long time, I just wanted to hear interesting stories. Explore the, if all this other stuff is possible, and because I knew at that, I already knew that there was something more to what was going on because of the things I'd had when I was younger. But I didn't really think of it in terms of I can relate to this somehow. It just seemed like, I don't know, just calling in on Sunday was there are so many, coincidences that had to happen just a certain way for that to have all worked out the way it did.
Right.
At least on my end. So,
yeah, the Blog Talk glitch, of course.
Yeah, that's part of it, and there are some other parts of it. Because I'd been listening in on the phone earlier, and my phone had died, and that was the only reason I came back in, where I could, click on links and such, and you guys put up a link and everything, and I wasn't even going to call back in, because my phone had died, and I was just I'm not going to look the number up again.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know, somebody said, I went ahead and called back. Oh, because of the guy, Ray, was saying he'd heard laughter. He called
mm-hmm.
in and tried on, and he just started laughing, and then it hung up. Yeah, I wanted to
Did you hear that too?
No, I didn't actually get to hear it. It was just went straight to the normal stuff.
But that's why you called in, because you wanted to test that out.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that. By the way, Ghoul in the chat room is saying, dang, I just thought this thing was on tonight. Yeah, I did it, an impromptu midweek chat. I just figured I wanted to do it earlier today and then set it up. So I apologize, but I'm sure right after the show it will give it a couple of minutes and it will appear in the archive here on Blog Talk Radio, and you can listen to me babble from the beginning, and then Nodwin saved the show. So there you go. Now, can I mention something that you wrote to me of an experience to talk about, or no? Because I want to ask you, can we talk about blank? I don't know if anything that you wrote to me privately was personal or not.
Wait, you mean me? Or...
Yeah, you.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure. I may not remember exactly what... yeah, everything I've written so far, yeah, That's
Is it okay?
fair game. Yeah.
Okay, well, you said something about a mummy?
A what?
Did you not write to me something about a mummy?
Oh, no, that was, I think Brad, or I think there might be two Brads on the forums. But he was saying something again about a mummy.
Oh, that was him. I thought that was you.
Yep.
Well, let me ask you this then. In terms of your visionary type things, does it feel as though they're evolving in any way, either with frequency or with content or anything like that?
Yeah, it did. After the Birdman, I keep saying that, but it really was like a helmet or a mask thing. But after that, which would seem to just be, you're being reprimanded, and you're kind of like, I've got my eye on you, and like, I better not catch you, thinking this way anymore, or that kind of thing. But after that, it did change. Like the next one that happened was, I think I said on the last show, it was dragons, and they, at the time I didn't know why it was happening or why I was seeing this, but they're at some point during, towards the end of it, I realized this was like some kind of test. Like it was, them menacing me and roaring, and and this time I could actually smell their breath, which didn't smell too good. And
what did it smell like?
Just like a mixture of mold and some type of meat. But
people, it's people.
And
no, nothing, huh? Hold on, wait.
Right,
I've got something for that. Yeah, that's right.
Well,
yes, thank you. Thank you, Laugh Track. I appreciate that. Tip your waitress. So you smelled it, smells.
Yeah, it was really bright tonight because it seemed more immersive. Like if I've been pulled out of my body and taken somewhere else, and I'm never going to come back. And at the time I really thought that, even though now it just seems totally silly. But the one in front of me just came right towards me like he was going to bite me in half or just swallow me. And for some reason, at that moment, I just get the message from somewhere, I don't know where, like this is a test, and just trying to push me far enough to get me to react in like a fight or flight response.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted me to fight, not because there's no way to run in this.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. I took on a different stance, and I don't know what, lashed out psychically or something like that. It's just all so weird. But the whole thing stopped, and they were just back to being just totally calm, and I got the impression that was the correct response. And then the whole thing ended, and I snapped back to normal perspective. So.
Mm-hmm. And then they were gone?
Yeah, it was gone.
Well, that's interesting. Well, first of all, it's interesting because we've learned that that ancient aliens, according to the aliens themselves, is bullshit, right? Thank you, laugh that. Yes. Crap. No, but it's interesting. It also smacks of, the shamanic experience of being pulled apart by these beings, in the shamanic journey. You get sort of pulled apart and reconstructed, and, it sounds something along those lines. So when you pass the test and then they go away, is there a new test the next time you see them, or was there even a next time?
Yeah, I didn't see them again. The next time it was it's something I really don't want to believe it was real. It was, because it's something I associate with just, people who are, that are, well, I just say it. It was like a lizard guy, I'm a really big guy, and he was bigger than me. And this was, was also different in that the battleground, or whatever you would call it, or whatever, this was like another, test or whatever, where I was supposed to fight with him somehow psychically. And
where do these tests take place? Is this all in your head? Is this in the room? Where is this?
Well, in this case, I was in the same spot, and after this vision, I actually got up and looked around the house, because that was where I had seen the whole thing happen. But how does it get to the vision? Are you watching TV? Are you reading, and then it comes to you? What? Are you asleep? I guess I missed that. No, it's just at night, and things have just stilled down, and I'm the only one awake, and then I'll just be thinking about things to myself, and that's while this stuff was happening, that was the way it would happen. And then. But
do you feel different when this comes on? Do you feel pressure in your head? Do you feel a humming sensation, or any sort of sensation like that?
Yeah, it's faint, but I do feel it's. Honestly, right before it happens, there's a rush feeling, or I'm suddenly speeding along really fast, going somewhere. Yeah, I don't know how else to say it. It's just maybe a buzzing feeling, or your body is vibrating at
mm-hmm.
a electric way, in a really high frequency way.
Okay, so this happens, and then you see in your your mind's eye, right? A reptile person.
Yeah, and it.
Does it seem normal and natural when it's happening?
Yeah, that's what's so weird about it. It's why would I put any validity to this at all? But while it's happening, it's just completely stark and real.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't understand. It just is.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is, and afterwards, with most of this, there may be parts of it where I don't remember it clearly, or it's not. Some of it's fuzzy, but while it's happening, I know it all had, while it's happening, it's too real to ignore,
right,
or just dismiss.
So what happened when this guy comes into existence?
Okay, as silly as it sounds, it was I took what the previous experience had given me, I guess, and used it to wrestle with this guy, it was a threatening thing, and I was defending the house. It was like a fight. So.
Huh.
But that's probably the silliest thing I remember. So.
Well, but what was the actual fight? Like, what's the psychic fight? Are you doing vocal commands in your head, or are you envisioning something?
Well, aside from physically grappling with this thing, there's also somehow like a battle of, I guess, will, or like, can I completely shut out my fear and just stare the thing down, like go right through it.
Mm-hmm.
And that seemed to be the whole point of the thing. And after I did that, and it was there was no more fear left. Like, that was it. You just stopped, and everything went back to normal.
See, I wonder if, once again, if this gets back to the switching of perspectives thing that I was talking about before, that from the perspective in which we live, it seems appropriate to choose fight or flight instinct in that situation because that's what we do. And so, but if you had the ability to actually switch perspectives to sort of the oneness thing, which of course you don't, but if you did, would there be a completely different nature to your relationship with this, where that wouldn't even come up? It wouldn't even come up as a test because it wouldn't apply to you anymore. I mean, is there a way to opt out? And it's not like it's not like fight or flight is the wrong answer. I wonder if you would pick flight if they also would have been like, yes, that's the right answer, and now here's your next test. You know what I mean? And like maybe the real answer is abstain.
Right.
I don't know, something to think about for next time if it happens again.
Yeah.
But I don't even know if you have the ability to abstain in the moment, because in the moment it's real and you've got one of two choices. And what are the repercussions for not choosing?
Right. But yeah, definitely afterwards I thought that, like, why did I need to do any of that at all? Or, if I consider it seriously, like, that's what I came up with. It's like, why did it need to do any of that?
Right.
It's all just silly stuff anyway. But if it is something where there's just different aspects of, what you are and, like, what's actually going on beyond just, the perspective we have now, it would be much nicer if I could, not switch between, but just kind of, see all of them on, It is like in The Matrix, where he finally reaches the old man in the room and says he sees all the different versions of himself standing there, either saying the same thing he was, or something similar, or something completely different, or like, oh, you've already done this, like, 5,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
But just it was just to see, like, that's like, I guess that's always a suspicion. It's like that it's all, it is a joke, and it's like there's, you're just repeating yourself.
Well, do you feel like you are getting anything out of it?
Well, I did feel a little less afraid of it after the thing with the dragon and the other guy.
Mm-hmm. So maybe you'll get something out of it after X amount of, dealings with this. I don't know,
maybe.
But when you're in the moment with it, does it feel familiar? Does it feel like you know what this is? How we talk about that a lot on the show.
Yeah, it somewhat does, but it's not like familiar, but like oh, I know what this is. But no, I don't. It's afterwards I think, like, well, no, I don't. Why did I feel like that? No, but not in the sense of like familiarity, like this is a friend of mine or something like that, or except in the case where the whatever it was, like offered to help me, like offered me like wisdom or more. In that case, it did seem like he was somehow related to me, like maybe it was one of my grandfathers who I'd been very close to and had died. Maybe, maybe it was him, or it seemed like, or something else that was like that close to me, because I'd been really close with him.
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure out what your struggle with the question has been your whole life, if at all. I mean, it sounds like from what you were saying that you haven't really even thought about this in terms of a pattern until last Sunday. Like, it really wasn't real for you until last Sunday, and then filling out the Project Core was even more so because now you're seeing the pattern there on paper.
Right.
But growing up with this, did it do nothing to expand? I want to say expand your horizons, but how you think about reality, even your own personal sense of wisdom, did it influence nothing at all because you didn't give it any credence, or you just sort of pushed it to the back, or is that not the case?
Well, I've always been, I guess, really obsessed with making my abilities of perception better, and not assuming anything, and trying to, and then at the same time, just like really questioning like what reality is, especially after at age 6 when that strange thing happened to me. It's like if the way my feeling of like who I am or what I am can just be taken away, then what is going on? Like, what is this? What am I?
Yeah, there you go.
And I've always just felt that like I really can't honestly participate in life if I don't really have a clear idea of what it is or what's going on, or
right.
What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to be doing? Just general stuff like that.
I think that's a perfect place to leave it. We only have about 2 minutes left, so I think that brings us full circle. And thank you for coming on and for sharing.
Well, thanks. I just don't. I had people to talk about this with, really. So it's a big help for me.
Okay, cool. Well, feel free to call back anytime.
Thanks.
And I will hopefully talk to you again soon. Well, there you go. There you have it. And I wonder if Nodwin, of course, we didn't get into how he was raised religiously, but I wonder if he were raised in any particular religion and started having those types of religious experiences, if it wouldn't have had the opposite effect of not opening his mind to what is reality, to those greater questions, but of closing his mind and saying, this is what reality is, because this is exactly what you've been told you should be experiencing, and here it is. So I wonder if that's not the reason for these sorts of quote-unquote alien visages, or these nonsensical, seemingly, visages. And the reason that they, keep saying to various people, we can appear to you however we want, you're never going to know, and they, at least in modern history, don't seem to be appearing as we expect a religious vision to appear, if maybe that's not the reason, because that would reconfirm all of this stuff as opposed to open our minds to the possibilities. And, of course, the greatest possibility of all is that how we envision ourselves isn't real, isn't how we actually exist. Because, like you said, if that can be taken away from you and there's still something there, what's there? What are you? And on that note, thank you for joining me, and we will see you on Friday at paratopia.net and again next Sunday right here on Blog Talk. Take care.